In this video we'll look at how to install and set up Visual SourceSafe. But before we get into the actual demonstration portion of the video, let's talk for a minute about what exactly Visual SourceSafe is. First and foremost, it's a centralized repository for source code. It works best in an environment where you have multiple developers working on a single project. In most development projects, the source code needs to be shared by multiple team members. However, there's a danger that two people might make changes to the same file, or worse, two people might make changes to the same passage of code. With Visual SourceSafe, each team member can check out a file, which prevents the other users from modifying that file. When the team member is finished making changes to it, he can check it back in, just like checking a book back into the library. And that makes it available to the rest of the team members. Each time that a change is made, Visual SourceSafe keeps a history record of what changed in that file. So if something was added to the source code that creates more problems than it solves, the team can opt to roll back the source code to get back to a previous point in time in the lifetime of the code. Then, once all the team members have made their changes, one person is typically responsible for getting the latest changes from everybody in Visual SourceSafe and then creating a build. He gets the latest copy of the code and creates an assembly, and if he's successful, then he'll label that version of the code so that if necessary, all the files in a project can be rolled back to the last known good build. Now, as I note at the bottom of the slide, optionally, multiple people can be allowed to check out a single file. And then you can view the various changes side by side to decide which changes you want to accept or which ones you want to reject back into the master file. SourceSafe is also permission-based, so you can prevent unauthorized snooping or prevent changes by people within your organization that have no business working on that section of code. We've already alluded to the next point, which is versioning by labeling builds. We'll talk about that more in another video. And it's also possible to take a single project and branch it out into two or more different projects. And the purpose of this is if two projects share a module or an assembly, like for example maybe a data access layer object that might be shared across multiple projects, each team can be responsible for making small improvements to that assembly, and all the teams that use it can benefit from it. Or, as I've described on the slide, you might need to maintain version 1 of a piece of software, but extended in version 2. The maintenance team still needs to make changes to version 1, but those changes can be merged back into the new development for version 2 at some point in time. So Visual SourceSafe helps you to accomplish this. And then finally, as I'll demonstrate in a later video in this series, Visual SourceSafe is a great choice for source control versioning because it tightly integrates with Visual Studio.net. Now, with that said, there are several other tools available that perform similar, if not more advanced functionality. However, most development shops that I'm familiar with default to Visual SourceSafe because it's free and it's from Microsoft. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about installing Visual SourceSafe Server, and then we will share that directory on the server, add users in the administration program, and then we will install Visual SourceSafe on a client from that shared directory using the network install for Visual SourceSafe. So let's get started. So let's go ahead and get started by installing Visual SourceSafe. You'll want to install it from the VSS folder from either a CD or network drive. I have a network drive mapped to a CD on another computer, so I navigate to the VSS folder and I'll find the setup.exe and double click it. And there are a few gotchas whenever we're installing and configuring Visual SourceSafe, so I want to go through some of those. But the first couple screens are your standard installation questions. Continue and OK. And at this point, Visual SourceSafe is looking for any previous installations. Even if you have a previous installation that you've deleted and it's in your recycle bin, it's going to try and put it on top of that previous installation. So in this case, it found the fact that in the past I've had Visual SourceSafe installed at c:/VSS, and it asked me if I want to change the folder. I'm going to actually install right on top of the previous location. That shouldn't be a problem as long as you don't have that drive shared or anything like that. So we have some options now. We can either create a shared database server, we can customize our installation, or we can create a standalone version. Let's start with the standalone version. This allows you to create a private database for your own personal development, and so you don't get the team benefits, but you do get the versioning and history, so you can roll back any changes that you've made to code in the past. So it still has some utility, and we're going to cover that very late in this series of videos on Visual SourceSafe. The next one is to select the custom, which allows you to just select the client software. But the preferred way to do it is to first install the shared database server on the computer that's going to be the server for Visual SourceSafe. And then each client machine will be allowed to install a net setup version of Visual SourceSafe from the shared database server directory on the server's computer. So we can go ahead and click this option. And then you see the standard installation script. And I'm going to pause this as it finishes, just for the sake of brevity. So after a few minutes, SourceSafe concludes its installation, and then it's going to want to register. I'm going to unclick that. The next thing that we need to do is find the directory where we installed Visual SourceSafe. In my case, it's C:/VSS. And what I want to do is right-click and go to the Properties in the context menu. And I want to share this folder out on the network. So I'm going to click this in Windows XP Pro. I'm going to click Share this folder on the network and then click Allow network users to change my files. Now we're going to get a warning whenever we first run the administration program for Visual SourceSafe. And it's going to suggest that we lock down this folder from any other users than those that absolutely need to access this folder on the network. So only those 15, 20 developers, 5 developers that you have in your department need to access Visual SourceSafe. Everybody else should be excluded from using that. However, I'm running Windows XP Pro and I'm running a work group and not a real network, and so you don't have those options, at least not on this tab like it suggests. So just want you to be aware that you may want to lock down this folder a little bit more stringently than I'm doing right now, so that you can prevent unauthorized access. I'm going to click OK, and when I do, a little hand will appear underneath the folder letting me know that this is a shared folder on my network. The next thing I'm going to do is start the administration program for Visual SourceSafe. And like I said, the little message box pops up, a security note, and it suggests that you enable sharing for the folder, click permissions, remove the everyone group, explicitly add database users. Now, I didn't have that option, but again, something you might want to take into consideration. So here's the administration program. You can see that the admin, me, is currently logged in. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is go to the Users menu option and select Add User, and that brings up the Add User dialog. We'll talk more about administration of users about halfway through this series of videos. But you have some options here in terms of how you want to authenticate the users in your system. The easiest way is just to use the same login credentials that they use to log into Windows. So when they log in to their Windows session and then they try to log in to SourceSafe, no additional login credentials are necessary. It will use their login information from Windows NT or Windows 2000 or Windows XP. Or you can create a new username and password. The problem is that they'll either have to type that in every time that they come into Visual SourceSafe, or they'll have to configure their client tool to automatically log in using this username and password. So either way, it's fine. Just pick a method that works for you. In my case, I know I have a network user named Bob with his password, and then I'll click OK. And notice that creates a new account with the rights of read and write. There's actually more rights available. It's an advanced option, and we'll talk about that in the future as well. Now the next thing we're going to do is install Visual Source Safe client tools on another computer and then try to access this shared database. One quick note that I want to talk about before we do that is actually go back to our Windows Explorer and take a look at the properties for our shared database folder. Notice that in addition to clicking the fact that I wanted to share this folder on the network, I also selected Allow Network Users to change my files. This is an important option because if you uncheck it, then whenever the client tries to log in for the first time, a folder and file information will not be saved on the server, and that needs to happen. So you have to allow network users to change my files for that shared network file. Okay, so let's go to a client PC. I need to find my server computer on the network, so I'm going to go to my network places, entire network, MS home, and this is the computer that contains the VSS folder. And notice that there's a net setup program. This gives you two operations in one. Not only does it set up Visual Source Safe client tools on all the client computers that you need it for, but it also will configure the client correctly to access the correct server. So I'm going to double click the net setup, and after a moment we get our setup screen. It asks for information. Again, it's going to search on my hard drive to see if I have any previous installations of SourceSafe. It finds an older version where it used to be installed on my hard drive. I'm going to just put it in the same place that I put it on the server, so c:/VSS. Answer some additional questions, and then the installation will start. And again, I'm going to pause this for the sake of brevity. So after the installation concludes, then I opened up the Visual Source Safe Explorer, which is the client tools that you'll use to manage the files that you check into and out of Visual Source Safe. Notice that it didn't ask me any credential information, but it knows automatically that I'm Bob, and that it also connects up to the correct database, as you see in the title bar as well. Additionally, as I flip back to the server computer, you'll notice in the Add Administrator tool that Bob is also logged in at the moment. So we've successfully installed Visual Source Safe in a server. We've installed the client tools as well. On a client machine, we were able to configure a new user and also share the Visual Source Safe directory correctly so that the net setup could be run. In the next video, we're going to talk about basic Visual Source Safe workflow of adding a new project, setting a working directory, adding files from the working directory into the new project, checking out those files, doing a get on those files, and more of those kinds of operations. Thank you.